Couple of announcements. This is the last time that we will be talking together about Buddhism and AA and the 12 steps. We've just scratched the surface, but I'm really glad. It's just we're conscious and we're bringing it here. Starting next week, we will be turning towards Buddhism and the climate crisis, climate change, care of our earth, love of our earth. And then October 13th, we will start our practice period. We will be focusing on the Lojong teachings through Norman Fisher's teachings, a book that bring a Zen presentation to these ancient, beautiful teachings, and our Shiso will be Gretchen. So that's where we're all headed. Besides birth and death and everything, whatever else may befall us on the way.
And there's a bag lunch today.
Yes, good, thank you.
Ellen's house. Everyone's welcome.
So here, this is what's going to be our source book for the next month or so. Fire Runs Through All Things, Susan Murphy's Zen Koans for Facing the Climate Crisis, Teachings on Earth, Mind, and Not Knowing. It's a powerful little book. So we're going to be focusing, we'll go into this topic through koans, which will be fun and enlightening, I think. We've been focusing on Laura Burgess's The Zen Way of Recovery and Illuminated Path Out of the Darkness of Addiction. And so here's my little confession commentary about what we're going to do today. Is I had put together and prepared a talk yesterday from the final chapters of Laura's book about forgiveness and the Brahma Viharas. And they're very beautiful. I really recommend them. And then as I want to do, I woke up this morning to review what I was going to, and I looked up the Brahma Viharas, and Lion's Roar has a whole series, I think from 2008, on the Brahma Viharas and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So those are there, and then because then I pushed another button, I should be careful how I do, but there's so many. One is San Francisco Zen Center has 9 essays on Buddhism and the 12-step model of recovery on their website, and it's going to be in the newsletter coming out. And I got so interested in that I want to bring that here today, and we'll see how it goes. And I just want to bring forward the language of the 12 steps, because there was a beautiful presentation on Tuesday. I don't know the language. I mean, I sort of know it, but I don't really know it. And I think it's important to bring forward how Buddhism has, because I know there's language in it that people came up against, especially the God language, and how Buddhism has helped turn that language. And of course, any language is fine. I mean, whatever lands and saves your life, wakes us up is. So, okay, so here we go on the 12 essays, all in the next 20 minutes or so. Put on your seatbelts. Step 1, admitted that we are powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unimaginable. I'm going to just bring
Unmanageable.
What did I say?
Unimaginable.
Unimaginable. I like that word, in case you hadn't noticed.
That's the 13th step.
Yeah. So I'm just going to bring forward parts of these essays that are all by different people. Powerlessness can be defined as that state in which something, alcohol in this case, has become the controlling factor in a person's life, the pivot around which all other aspects revolve, often in spite of his or her intentions to the contrary. And then goes on to talk about how suffering is the central teaching of Buddhism. First noble truth. The origin of suffering is desire, literally thirst or craving. I said on Tuesday, and I think as we move into looking at the climate and the climate crisis, same thing, it's thirst, desire, I have to have it, you know, it's like consumerism is, and what are we doing here? So this isn't going to end when we finish today. This is the first noble truth, the origin of suffering, desire, literally thirst, which gives rise to fresh birth, bound up with relish and passion, running here and there, delighting in this and that. In other words, sense desire, desire for existence and desire for extinction. It is worthwhile noting that drinking till we pass out or go into blackouts is a desire for extinction. The initial teaching of both Buddhism and the steps is recognition of the reality of suffering in our lives. As long as we are not willing or able to admit this, pretending to ourselves and others that things aren't really that bad, there is no possibility for action. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. This step can seem a formidable barrier to anyone who is unable or unwilling to accept any concept of God or spirit or anything smacking of the supernatural. I just want to add in here, because I've been wanting to say it, I remember it and then I forget it, is Marion Woodman, who was a Jungian, who was an alcoholic, said she really thought alcoholism, and I would say many things, but alcoholism, because alcohol is sometimes known as spirits, is just a confusion around spirits, or we're looking for some kind of a relief, and it goes this way or that way. Getting caught in questions and demands for certainty can stall us for a long time, perhaps forever. Here's a great Buddhist story. I love this Buddhist story. In the early scriptures, the Buddha offers a metaphor. Suppose a person, were wounded by an arrow thickly smeared with poison, and his friends, her friends and companions brought a surgeon to treat them. The person would say, I will not let the surgeon pull out the arrow until I know the name, the clan of the person who wounded me, whether the bow that wounded me was a longbow or a crossbow, whether the arrow that wounded me was hoof-tipped or curved or barbed. All this would still not be known to that person, and meanwhile that person would die. The Buddha is talking about accepting the teaching on suffering and its ending, but the metaphor is apt for the steps as well. There is suffering. Oh, this is suffering. Stop trying, talking to myself too, stop trying to negotiate with it. I mean, we do it all the time, just a little of this, just a little of that. Well, you know, it's just like keep coming back. Step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him or her. In step 2, we became willing to consider the possibility that we could be restored to sanity by a power greater than ourselves. We saw that it is not necessary to define too closely or too narrowly the nature of that higher or broader or deeper power, or even to have too precise an idea of what sanity is. Step 2 was basically an exploration of new territory. I will, Dan Layton has a great essay that I found years ago by pushing buttons about self-power and other power. And he says, and I really, and it was partly a commentary on the Lotus Sutra, is the way we in the West have taken in Buddhism is we've mostly made it all about self-power. We've just taken one more thing and turned it into, I'm going to do it and I'm going to improve. And this is the self is at the center of it. And his offering is that until we mature, we will not be mature practitioners until we understand a really deep root through line in Buddhism, which is other power. It really is called, it's why when we do the ordination ceremony, we call in all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. We little individual human beings can't do, there isn't that anyway. You can't do it by yourself because that's an illusion. And there's some very deep maturity where you completely take responsibility for this life and you understand that this life is all lives and that there is goodness and Buddha nature and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas across time and space. You just have to stop and breathe each moment and see what happens, because that's where everybody shows up, where everybody already is. In the third step prayer, we ask to be relieved of the bondage of self. This can take on many meanings. It can mean giving up our fixed patterns of behavior and thought, and means returning to the place of not knowing. Here's a wonderful story. I love this one too. A monk asked a Zen master, what shall we do when the 100, the 1,000, the 10,000 things come forward towards us all at once? And the teacher replied, just don't try to control them. You can't do this by yourself. Sit down. Keep coming back. How can we be in the darkness of our despair without any real idea of the light? Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Buddhism calls this cause and effect karma. The word itself in Sanskrit means deed. In Buddhist understanding, it refers to volitional activity, acts that are preceded by will and that have consequences for the actor. These consequences can either be immediate and obvious, if I throw the glass against the wall, it will break, or cumulative and subtle. The second sort is sometimes described as environmental karma, actions that create an atmosphere of our lives. So in Buddhism, the fourth step is about acknowledging karma as the basic engine of our life. This happens, then that happens. If this doesn't happen, that doesn't happen. That's how we begin to wake up. There's choice in each moment. This is, Chelsea's not here, so I'm not, but the fox koan, anybody who knows the fox koan is all about this. And I love my foxy little self and my big bushy tail, but I also know I better keep an eye on my foxy little self because it likes what it likes and it has its own opinions. The outflow of this and the managing of this, to use that word, is the Buddhist precepts. The precepts say, you know, it's not like do this and don't do that and you'll be a good person or it's going to fix everything. It just says to me, wise, compassionate human beings across time and space have deeply studied what it is to be human. I want to pay attention in these places. And if you look at the precepts and you stay with them over time, they pretty much are, they will, this cause and effect is, and the precepts help at each turn. So what's really important here and what are we doing here? Is this asserting self that's in relationship, that knows it is interbeing with everything, or is this just my willful little self? Which we all have, and it's not gonna go away. I am more and more convinced that this is one of the things, sorry, I'm sort of on this thing about, and as Buddhism comes to the West, we have some idea, well, who knows, probably across time and space, we all want transcendence. Alcohol's the same thing, spirits, like, we can get out of here, you know what? It's about being here, landing and meeting suffering, which is, what are the 100 million different ways that we distract ourselves? We've all got them and we've all got patterns. No blame, no guilt, just pay attention and take responsibility. Step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Actually, I hadn't seen that before. You admit to another human, which is here they talk about the full moon ceremony. It's also spiritual friendship, is being in relationship with ourselves and others enough to be able to say, all my ancient twisted karma from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. I'm not a bad person. I'm just waking up in this story, in this body, as I've believed it to be, as I've been conditioned and enacted it. And I just know there's so much suffering here and in the world. There is something about bearing witness. It's just to bear witness to ourselves and each other. Our stories, true or imagined, are the stuff of us, and by sharing them with another, we can begin to retell them in a fashion that returns us to the world. Deep thanks to Constance and Ellen, who courageously shared their stories on Tuesday. Step 6 and 7. We might actually do this. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character and humbly ask him, her to remove our shortcomings. And then the commentary is in 6 and 7, we begin preparing ourselves for a life of service. These are really, I think that's why I wanted to bring them. These are really beautiful. As the 7-step prayer says, remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness. That's a bodhisattva vow.
Yes.
It is at this point that the steps can be illuminated by the Buddhist teachings of anatta, literally no abiding self or soul. This is taught as one of the 3 marks of conditioned existence, along with anicca, impermanence, and dukkha, which is variously translated as suffering, incompleteness, or unsatisfactoriness. It is the most radical of the Buddhist teachings in that it contradicts not only most religious philosophies, but the way in which we experience the world and ourselves. Anatta means that there is nothing of us that is not subject to change, nothing that is permanent, nothing that is not contingent on causes and conditions. We are the sum of our characteristics, physical and mental, and only that. This teaching is sometimes called emptiness, in that all things are said to be empty of any independent self-existence. Another name for this is interdependence, because all things are dependent upon each other for their existence. It's so sweet, ongoing to me, having done this for a long time, but some of you too, where these just aren't words anymore. I mean, I'm as self-centered as anybody, although there's a little more room than there used to be, and more compassion, and but just the taste of it is it begins to permeate your life and inform your life. And it's sort of like the 12 steps of Buddhism. It's just like, just keep coming back. Just show up, just stay, zazen, breathe, study the self. It's pretty simple stuff, and we all know how much help we all need. One way of explaining this is humility. Yay, humility. The delusion that we are separate from others, can live as our own whim inspires us, and act as if we are not contingent on myriad causes and conditions, is the primary cause of our suffering. Humility, same root word as humus, earth. Come down to earth. Come back to the body. Pay attention. You really want or need this or that, much less 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them, whatever it is. The Noble Eightfold Path, the 12 steps conspire to relieve us of the bondage of self and to open us to the world in ways that we cannot imagine at the beginning of the process. Steps 8, 9, and 10. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to all of them. I was thinking there was a period where Susan Spencer was doing this. I was so moved by it. I mean, she really went way, I don't think she'd mind me saying this. She was calling up people out of her past and making amends, you know, back from on the East Coast, back when she was this and she was that. She really, I don't know that it came out of 12 steps. It came out of, I think, her Buddhist practice of just, I've harmed people and I want to take responsibility. Made direct amends to such people in whatever way possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Continued to make personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So here's the story that goes with this one. Just by coincidence, we might recognize this one. Once the disciple Ananda spoke to the Buddha, saying, "It seems to me that half of the holy life is association with good and noble friends." The Buddha replied, "Not so, Ananda. The whole of the holy life is association with good and noble friends, with noble practices, and with noble ways of living. You can't do this by yourself. There is literally no such thing." And Sangha, community, I will heal the world. Sincere conversation. I have a really deep belief in just bearing witness. Dogen, to study Buddhism is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened by the myriad beings. How we help each other. Step 11. Hey, how are we doing here? This is cool. Huh? Sought through prayer and meditation, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand him, her, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Meditation, which to me is a living prayer. I mean, that's I'm praying when I sit down. I'm praying when I stand up. I mean, my hope is in the moments that there are more of them, is that my life is a living prayer dedicated to goodness and loving kindness and equanimity and service. But here's Dogen. Zazen, literally sitting meditation. The Zazen I speak of is not learning meditation. It is simply the Dharma gate, effort, pose, and bliss. the practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. It is the manifestation of ultimate reality. Traps and snares can never reach it. Once its heart is grasped, you are like the dragon when he gains the water, like the tiger when she enters the mountain. I love those. Dogen is saying our meditation is an expression of our innate awakening, the basic sanity we talk about in step 2. This is why he uses practice realization as a single step. To practice in this way requires the same sort of faith we encounter in step 3, a sort of willing suspension of disbelief in the idea that we are irretrievably flawed and that we deserve the worst that life can throw at us. How would it be if we behaved as though we believed we were Buddha? When we sit down in meditation, we enact Buddha and we need nothing more. Just this, just this. Prayer and meditation in Buddhist terms reforms and trains the mind in bodhicitta, the thought of awakening. This thought of awakening or vow to recovery is what guides us on our way from alcoholic insanity to the grateful acceptance as things as they are and the willingness to live for the benefit of all beings. Yahoo. Step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry these messages to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And what is brought forward here is the 12th step can be understood as embodying the 3 treasures or the refuges. The Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. The word Buddha literally means the awakened one, and each one of us is first of all attending to his or her awakening. The Dharma is the teaching, and the Sangha is the community of those who practice together, or the wider interpretation, the community of all living beings, those with whom and for whom we practice the principles of awakening. We come back into contact with our potential for intimate connection with our own lives, with others, and the world. Awakening is an ongoing process wherein we meet the same situations again and again. I'm going to say that again. Awakening is an ongoing process wherein we meet the same situations again and again, although each time on a slightly higher level. I wouldn't necessarily say higher. I might say more intimate, more spacious, more close in. Higher is a little tricky. Dogen Zenji said, "I have no desires on becoming a Buddha." Dogen defines enlightenment as effort without desire. Buddhism expresses this in the 4 bodhisattva vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Oops, my battery's gonna go. So on my computer, no, my personal battery, I think is fine. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are endless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. So we're going to switch to your computer.
I'm sorry, I everything looks fine here.
No, I'm saying my computer is, we're about to lose the battery.
Okay, well, why don't I just bring mine over?
Yeah,
now,
great.
so we don't.
Okay. Somehow my battery didn't charge last night.
Let go of the.
So I think we're going to be fine.
You have to think about how to do this. It's just.
Are you going to? Oh, except you need that Uh-oh.
I don't need that, no, so if you keep that in. But this should work now, right?
Wow, it's a big screen.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, participants, you know.
Everybody went away.
Maybe.
Okay,
Go away.
it's okay.
You sure?
Yeah, we're fine. Thank
Are
you.
they still there somewhere?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It says Buddha's way is not somewhere else. It is right here, right in the midst of all the problems and everything else. It is unsurpassable because there is nothing beyond this. Dogen quotes an old Chinese Tenzo head cook saying, "Nothing in the world is hidden. Nothing in the world is hidden." There's a new understanding of the self which comes naturally with practice. When we first come into recovery, we are so empty we can only take, and for a long time we take and take and take like babies who need to be fed and loved. Eventually, someone quickly, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, we are so filled up that just as naturally we give. The self is no longer an isolated body in space, bumping into other isolates like ping pong balls and free fall, but a point along the continuum of interconnectedness. This experience of self and other as one, or as Suzuki Roshi would say, not one, not two, is the profound essence of step 12 and the way of the Bodhisattva. Those are beautiful essays.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have, we could go into groups of 3, I think, and have, a little less than 15 minutes. What does any of this bring up? And, one thing you could focus on if you